What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Hog Holler, Tennessee. Come to you today. I'll tell you a little story that one of my followers told me. I have been talking back and forth with this lady, and she had an experience back in October in around Cades, Cove area. Her family and her neighbor's family, they all went on a camping trip, and they took their kids, and she said this experience has shaken her to the core. She reached out to me asking me what I thought about it and if I'd ever encountered or known anybody that had encountered the things that she encountered. Now, before I get started, I know I've promised you all I will do a feral human question and answer when I answer some questions that I've got, and I still intend to do that. It's just that that video will be a little more lengthy than what I've got time for today, but I will do that video. I promise you I will. Now back to this video. The lady, like I say, she had been talking to me, and it took a little bit for her to tell me what happened, and I could tell that she was very hesitant to talk about it and still scared to this day. And like I say, this happened back in October. So they come down, we'll just say from up north. She don't want me to use her name or too much about her. So her and her family and their neighbors, they all came down, stayed in the campground here in the Smoky Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountains. And matter of fact, it's Cades Cove area. Some of that might sound familiar to you guys. So they set up camp. They camp side by side with their neighbors. A couple of nights go by, you know, everything's fine. A couple of nights into the stay, and their daughter wanted to stay with the neighbors. Matter of fact, they'd been switching back and forth. One night they would stay with her daughter and them, and the next night her daughter would stay with the neighbors in their campers, sort of back and forth. Well, this particular night they were to stay with the neighbors. So it's getting about dark, and she's sitting out on a picnic table reading a book, enjoying the nice fall weather, when she hears something off in the distance in the woods. Now, she described it to me as a baby crying. It's what she thought would be a baby. And then the next time she would hear it, it sounded like a child yelling for help. So she followed this cry, this scream, and to see where it was going, she goes off on the trail out through our little game trail, and she hears it again. And she can still see the campground at this point. She can still see lights from the campground. So she eases on out a little further. And now at this point, she's not on any hiking trail. She was on a little game trail, she said. And she started feeling an odd feeling. She started feeling creepy. She started feeling like somebody or something was watching her. She gets ready to turn around and go back to her camper. And at that point, she heard her daughter's voice yell for her. She said she distinctly heard her daughter first say "Mom," and then say her name, and then ask for help. So at this point, the lady thinks, my daughter's not next door in the camper, she's out here in these woods, lost, needing help. So she, of course, goes on a little further, to see what's going on, to see what she can find. And as she goes on out through the woods there, she comes across something. She can see something. And it's something that's standing in the middle of the game trail, and it's looking straight at her. Now, she tells me she cannot describe exactly what it is that she's seeing. She said that it's black. She said it's not transparent. She said you can't see through it. It's solid, but it looks like a shadow. And she says it's standing there with its hands folded, like something would be if they were praying. Said the hands were folded down at the chest. And said that she could tell that this was what was making the noise. And she would not have been able to see it if the moon hadn't been just a little bit bright and shining on it. She said she would have walked into it. She said she felt this thing try to communicate with her telepathically, to come closer. And she was reluctant to do it. And she could still hear this cry for help coming from behind this thing, she said. She said this made her freeze in place. She was not able to move for a few minutes. And she was terrified. She said this black thing all of a sudden started moving and started taking steps closer to her. Real cautiously, she said, taking steps. It would take a step. She said it would sort of squat, look around, take another step. And she said it done this, getting closer and closer. She was unable to scream and unable to move. And she knew this thing was getting closer. She started praying. And she said when she started praying, she said the Lord's Prayer, and whatever this was that was holding her, it turned loose. She was able to move. And she said at that point she turned, and she could no longer see the lights to the campground. She could no longer see the trail. She was petrified. She said she took off running to get her husband. And she was going to find him, and they were going to come back and find her daughter, because she knew for certain this was her daughter. So she runs through the woods. She finally sees the lights to the campground. She can still see this thing behind her. She looks back one time. She says it's not running after her, but she knows that it's still there. And she said there were other people there too. She did not see nobody, but she could hear what she thought were people walking in the leaves. You know, the leaves are heavy on the ground at that time of year. And she could hear whispering coming from in behind the trees. So she knew there was other people or other something else was there other than this one thing. So she makes it back to her camper, and she tries to explain to her husband that their daughter is out there in the woods lost. She heard her yelling for help, and they need to go right away and look for her. She said she didn't a bit more get this out of her mouth when her daughter and her daughter's friend come out of the back room of the little camper and kind of like, what are you talking about? We're right here. So she said that was the creepiest feeling that she had ever got. She don't know what it was. She didn't know what it wanted. She said that she didn't sleep none for nights after this. She said something to the park ranger about it. They seemed to think that maybe she ingested something that, or some sort of medicine that made her hallucinate. Try to convince her of that. Try to convince her of between the wind and the blowing leaves and the particular colors that she really, her eyes was playing tricks on her. The wind was making the sound, you know, rustling through the trees, and she just thought she heard somebody. But she knew better. She said she felt an evil. She said whatever that black thing shadow thing, whatever it was. She said it actually looked through her to her soul. She could feel it. So they had a few more nights at the campground. She said she did not sleep the rest of the time they were there. A matter of fact, the last night before they left, she said she could hear this thing again telepathically communicating with her. And she's inside the camper. And she said that she felt like it was out in the woods somewhere telling her to come here, come forth, come see me. And it terrified her. So when they left, they go home. They live hundreds and hundreds of miles away from here up north. She said when they get home, she can still feel this presence. It's not as strong as it was, but she still feels it. And she still had nightmares. She said it terrified her. And still does to this day. Now the nightmares have stopped. The telepathic communications no more. She said that everything eventually stopped. The feeling of being watched, that something followed her home, that something was in her dreams after her. But now when she dreams and she has nightmares, they're a little bit different. It's kind of like what would have happened if I would have went on, if I hadn't looked up and saw that thing and I'd walked into it, into the darkness. You know, where would I be today? Where would this have taken me? This scarred her forever. If you come to the mountains or any woods or anything and you hear something yelling for help, be careful. You know, if you think there's a child out there, get somebody to go with you. Get some help. Don't go by yourself and try to look for something. And if you do, be very careful. Be alert. Look up in the trees. Look all around. Because we don't know what's in these old mountains. They're so old that nobody knows. It's a very spooky and evil place, especially when the sun goes down. She said the fog, of course, was coming off the ground. They don't call it the Smoky Mountains for nothing. She said that just made it even more eerie when that happened. But she's over it now, but she thinks that she may have like a PTSD or something from this happening to her. It's affected her. It's affected her life. She no longer enjoys going out in nature, as it would any of us. So I want to tell you all this story. She passed this story on to me, and I've been talking to her. She's doing a whole lot better. She's got her life straightened out. She knows that she's far, far away from this thing now. Of course, she wonders what it was. You know, that's the hard part, is not understanding. And you know, there's a lot of things going on in this world today that we don't understand. It seems like, I've said it before, the veil is thinning. It's even thinner here in the mountains and in the national parks, I believe. I believe that's, if you want to call it a test site or whatever, but I actually believe that there's things that go on in the woods here and all over that, I don't know, it's just different. When I was younger and I would go hunting and go out in the woods and explore, I did not feel a presence like I do now when I go out sometimes. I don't know how to explain it. There is an intelligence, and you can feel it. If you know what to look for, you can feel something. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense to you all, but for somebody that's spent most of their life in the woods and going out there, trust me, there's something going on. There's something happening. I honestly believe that we are in the season. And for my Bible believers, Bible readers out there, you know what that means. But I honestly believe we are in the season. You know, it says the hearts of men will fail them. What are we going to see that's going to cause people to have heart attacks? It's going to scare people to death. I don't know. I don't know, but I do feel it when I go out. Like I said, there's a difference. There's an intelligence that's out there in these woods. Now, it doesn't always seem threatening at all, but it does seem to know that you're there also. Anyway, that being said, it's been a while since I've been on here. This was my best friend I ever had in the world. His name was Bobby. He's buried here. He died back a couple, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. He ain't got a headstone yet. He'd been very sick, and I lost him. Knew him since I was in kindergarten. Got a lot of stories to tell about old Bob. Me and him run around a lot together when we were young. Got in these woods and hunted. His dad taught me how to hunt and fish. Had a good time growing up with him. Got a lot of crazy, crazy stories to tell on him. I'll dedicate this episode to him. Tell you a story. Most of my stories are spooky. I'll tell you one not so spooky, not so crazy. Me and Bob went fishing one night, all night long. It's getting late. We was doing the kind of things that teenagers do to get in trouble when they're out late, you know. We was consumed a few adult beverages when we was younger. And Bob helped his dad finish concrete. He had a hard job. So it's about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We're fishing with chicken livers. And I mean the catfish are biting. And we're feeling pretty happy. And he tells me I've got to go pour over 100 yards of concrete tomorrow. I've got to quit fishing. I've got to go get a couple hours of sleep. So we start thinking, well, what can we do to put a stop to that, to where Bob don't have to go finish concrete tomorrow and we can stay out a little later. It's already probably 2:30, 3 o'clock. We come up with an idea. We're going to go to the place where he's pouring concrete and we're going to tear the forms down. They can't pour concrete if they ain't got no forms. We figure he'll show up. Yeah, he'll have to get up out of bed. He'll show up. All the forms will be smashed and tore down. Him and his dad will turn around and go back home. He'll go back to bed. We have got it figured out. So we go and we smash them forms all to pieces. We knock them apart, break them down. I mean, there's not one form standing. There's not a 2x4 anywhere. Oh, we think we're so smart. We go back and we fish a couple more hours. It's about time for the sun to come up. So we go home. I go home and I get in the bed. I'm off that day. I sleep till about, I don't know, 1 o'clock nearly. Get up and I go down to Bob's and he's not home. 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock rolls around. He's not home. About 6:30 at night, I see him and his dad in that old truck rolling in. I walk down there and I say, Bob, where have you been? He said, well, I'll tell you exactly where I've been. He said the first 4 hours of the morning I was building forms, and then the rest of the day I was finishing 100 yards of concrete. That's exactly where I've been. He slammed the door in my face. So I dedicate this to you, Bob. You're the best friend I ever had, brother. Guys, I'll get back in here. Y'all take care. I love y'all. Love each and every one of y'all. Stay safe out there. And watch your back. This is your buddy, South Force 10. See you guys.